there's a link between clutter and trauma.
Hmm.
There's a link that what we realize, and when we had a trauma, we have more chance to accumulate clutter.
Hello and welcome back to the Ignition Path podcast. My name is Kyle Goodknight. I'll be your host. Today I've got a great, I stumbled across her book, flipping through Facebook, I think it was, and it's an amazing concept of what she has come up with. Then we had our pre-meeting and we ended up finding out that I'm a first responder, as everyone knows, and she was a first responder. And I was like, wow, this is a great, connection of how the first responder world and the trauma world combine with what she's doing now. And I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let her discuss everything about what she's doing now in the trauma-informed world. But I've got Valerie Huard on with me. How you doing, Valerie?
Pretty good. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Of course, before we get started, everybody don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you're listening to this message or watching it on YouTube, please don't hesitate to hit that share button, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Let people know about this content. That's the only way we're going to grow, is letting you word of mouth, letting it get out there. What's really cool is, of course, a lot of people know that I have two podcasts. Valerie is going to be a secondary guest on my other podcast. We'll dive more into the first responder world and the trauma stuff that she deals with. But today we're going to focus on her business, how she was a first responder first, and then what she did and the path that she took to ignite her new passion and what she's doing now. So Valerie, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background. Go ahead and share with us about a little bit more about your timing and time frame and what you did in the first responder world. Of course, you're from Ontario, Canada, so it's a whole nother, we all, first responders all deal with the same stress anywhere in the world because we see the same things, but it's how the different municipalities and the different countries operate their systems that could apply more stress than others and have more things in place than others. And I know a few people from Canada that were first responders, and it's a whole different ballgame up there when it comes to mental health and how they help you deal with stuff. And even in the nursing world, it's even different up there. So once again, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there. Go ahead and tell us who you are, your background as an EMS, and then how things got started, and we'll go from there.
So let's go back 30 years ago.
30 years. Okay, so about the time I started healthcare. So that would have been like 97. That would have been right around 97.
A little bit before that.
Okay,
Let's say
so
92.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So
a little bit more than 30 years.
Okay.
So that's when I was developing my passion for first aid.
Okay.
So I got in an organization called St. John Ambulance, that is international organization. And this is where I first start assisting to hockey game and so on. The national day that we were celebrating and things like that, like administrating first aid during those events. So that was my first touch to first aid. And a little bit later in 96, I got into occupational therapy. That's just a little part in my journey, but that makes a lot of sense when we get to decluttering later on.
Absolutely. Knowing what you do now, that's like a perfect,
exactly.
The passions and what you learned there is actually what's helping you in your business now compared to the first responder stuff that you'll talk about.
Correct.
Yeah, because I worked in a hospital as well, so I know all about occupational therapy, physical therapy, respiratory therapy. That's what I am and was. So yeah.
And then in 98, I don't know if you guys remember, but in Quebec province, there were a huge ice storm.
I do not remember that.
Yeah, they declare national emergency and all of that. And it was a good 3 weeks without electricity for thousands and thousands and thousands of hundred thousands of people without electricity on a big area. So that was my first introduction to really emergency state. And we were the one installing the emergency shelter and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And, evacuating elder from the residency or the nursing care where they were, because there were no electricity there. There were no backup. There were no nothing. So they cannot stay there on their machine. So fast forward, beginning of 2000, in Quebec province, they decided to install the first responder program. And one of that program was to train firefighter, policemen, and other people in the first aid section so they can be there before EMS or paramedic gets on.
Okay.
Like before the beginning of 2000, there were no paramedic in Quebec province. They were called,
Okay.
I'm not sure in English how we were calling them, but probably EMS or something like that. It's just that they were not trained with the different medication and things like that.
Okay.
But they were still the people in the ambulance. But that kind of two speed system got in store at the beginning of 2000. And this is where I played a big role in helping installing that system in Quebec province in all the South Shore of Montreal, training the instructor and so on.
Okay.
That was fascinating. And I was also doing back then the Formula One races in Montreal and all other activities going on that Gilles Villeneuve circuit. So that's the Formula One race, and
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure.
the kart, the
Yeah.
NASCAR,
Right.
all of them coming there. So, and we got some interesting things over
Oh, I
there
bet you
because it's
did.
on an island,
Yeah, exactly.
There's some place that we cannot evacuate the driver
Hmm.
via road.
Right. You got to go helicopter. Right. Yeah.
No, we need to go boat before,
Boat before. Okay.
and then an ambulance to the helicopter.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh yeah,
To the definitive level one trauma center, or what do you guys call them up there? Our top notch trauma centers here are called level one. What do you guys
yeah,
call them in Canada?
trauma center.
Just trauma center. Like we
Yeah,
have different designations. So we have some hospitals that are trauma two, but they can still deal with 99% of all traumas, and actually
yeah.
certain traumas that even our main level two here in Columbus, Ohio. Like I will always take a hand injury to that one. I won't take that hand injury to the level one because all the hand surgeons are at all the proper world renowned microsurgeons are at the level two center, and the
A
really the
little
only
bit
thing they're
different. It's a
what's
little
up
bit
a
different.
little bit different,
I'll
yeah.
say that you can take a head injury to any hospital,
We could take them to any hospital, but the
but
ideal, like the primary, the best place to go where someone would actually most likely have the chance of using their hand that's been chopped off or fingers that have been messed
oh,
up, it should be
so,
the
sometime it will be bring to another hospital, stabilize, and then bring
then bring,
to
yeah,
the other
sure. Oh,
hospital.
sure. I mean, if it
So
depending on how it is. I'm just lucky I live in
exactly.
the city and I'm only 20 minutes away if I'm driving normal, let alone lights and
No.
sirens to get to any of my trauma centers. I'm just very lucky
Yeah,
to where I
no,
live. We've got high level pediatric and adult trauma care. I mean, the Ohio
that's
State
good.
University is right in my backyard, and that's one of the top hospitals in the country as well. So
Yeah, no, in Montreal, we have one as well
okay,
that is designated for the
sure,
races, and they even
sure.
build on the race, they build an hospital
Yeah, oh for
to
sure to deal with.
stabilize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
exactly.
X-rays, with everything,
Yeah, exactly.
operation
So when
room
you were
and the
working,
stuff.
all of that stuff, that was just that one wasn't an entrepreneurial thing. That wasn't your own
No,
business. That was
no,
just
it
working for the
wasn't.
man. That was just working for the municipality or the private sector,
Correct.
and you were just clocking in and clocking out, doing your time and having your
Yes.
days off. Okay.
But at some point, life continued rolling on, and I was having all in my memory. I was having nightmare. I was having flashback. I was having difficulty
PTSD. Yeah.
sleeping,
I just went to a conference
all
last Friday, and you listed like, of course, there's four categories of PTSD, and of course, like everything you've listed so
yeah,
far is like the top number one thing on each category.
exactly.
I
That's
don't want
why
to
I
laugh about it.
select
It's not a
those
funny
one.
thing, but it's like so many of us were never trained in what PTSD is or how to recognize it, and we're getting better, and we still need to get better, and that'll be our subject of the other podcast, of course. But go
Yeah.
on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So basically, I got diagnosed with PTSD back
Okay, so
then.
you did get diagnosed. Okay,
I got diagnosed, yes. Back then, they were not talking about complex PTSD or
correct.
childhood.
Sure,
Those
childhood traumas,
designations
ACEs, yeah.
were not there. So, but I got diagnosed, and the psychiatrist asked me to stop what I was doing, basically,
Okay, like
to
one way
go
to
on
solve it
leave
is just
for,
get out of the fire, yeah.
yeah, but to get on leave first, but I was not able to go back after. So, but it was the beginning of my journey of self-growth and healing. And my husband get into the military during that time. And came the moment where we were needing to move. They sent an estimator because it's the military who moves you from place to place in the country. And I will always remember that guy coming in and saying, "Ma'am, we cannot move you. You need to let go of at least half your belongings."
Wow.
We were having the equivalent of an 18-wheeler truck of clutter to let go. And
In
even
one
if
house.
I talk big,
Yeah,
people were able to come in my home and not seeing the clutter. It was all in hidden place. So my living room, my dining room, yes, there were piles of paper on the dining room and kids' toys around it, but it was not like we see on the hoarder show
sure.
where
Oh,
they
I've
bring
seen.
dumpster, you know,
I've been in hoarder homes, just as you probably have
as well.
on emergency
Yeah.
runs. We're like, we have to chop the side of the house off so before we can get them out of here. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
So, but we were able to circulate and all of
sure.
that in the home. So, but that was the first time where it really hit me. I need to let go of half my possession.
Yeah, but it can be tough.
So, yeah, my husband had to move first because we had 3 months to declutter. That wasn't enough. And I stayed behind with two toddlers. And the night he left, I was really wondering, will we be able to reunite at some point? You know, all those questions about life. And then I started on a journey of decluttering. But what is fascinating is after a couple months decluttering, I was smiling, I was laughing, I didn't need a nap in the afternoon. I was not having nightmare anymore in the night. Like as I let go of my possession, I let go of the trauma as well.
Wow.
Exactly. So we'll
So
dive more into that into the other podcast,
yeah,
but basically,
yeah. Well, we'll dive a little bit here because I do have a question.
yeah,
So because I'm sure that what you're doing now, and we'll get more into depth on exactly what you've created, which is why I really wanted you. I was so glad I found your name and was able to contact you because I'm like, this is a great topic for both my podcasts. But when it comes to so what did you find, or the studies that you found? Because I know you've written a book and you have a program that deals with clutter
correct.
and trauma, trauma informed and trauma, what we do and what some
So
people do as trauma. When it comes to, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question without giving everything away until later. Um, did you find when you started, you mentioned that you started being happier as you let go of some possessions?
I
Were some of
didn't,
those possessions like holding on to some of the trauma that you had a reminder
some
of
yes,
certain
some
things?
no.
Okay.
Some yes,
Okay.
some no. So, and then we were able to reunite,
Were
but
you sure you weren't just happy because your husband wasn't there? I know. No,
no, I'm
I'm just
sure.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm
My wife is
sure.
happy at certain times when I'm not around, but then she's always like, "I miss you."
No, no. I was having two children with disability back then. I was fostering, so yeah. Alone, it's a little bit a lot. And when we reunite, I decided to become a home stager. This is when we
Okay.
decided to get onto the entrepreneurial journey
Okay.
because I was wanting
What
to
year was
help.
that? What year was that, you think?
That's in 2014.
Okay.
And then did my training before starting the business to be basically, I didn't want other family to have to live what we had to live. I
Mm,
was wanting to basically at the beginning helping military family to be able to move without being separated. They already have all the mission and the posting and things like that that get the family separated. There were
mm-hmm.
no reason when they moved to get separated. In 2015, when I started working with families, I realized pretty fast that it's not putting a blanket here or there or removing some picture frame that is difficult. What is difficult is the decluttering
Yeah.
in preparing a home.
Yeah.
So I get trained in professional organizing. And the more I was going into home of client, more people were talking to me about their trauma.
Hmm.
Yes, there were something that I was having an opening about that. Not that I was talking to them about my trauma, but that I was able to listen
Empathizing.
to
Yeah.
them,
You were able to
empathizing.
empathize with their situation. Sure.
Exactly. So we contacted neuroscientists, we read tons and tons of paper to really realize this is really something. There's a link between clutter and trauma.
Hmm.
There's a link that what we realize, and when we had a trauma, we have more chance to accumulate clutter.
Interesting.
And it's really because, PTSD, for example, is a stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is in the category of a stress disorder where
Sure.
the cortisol is all over the place. Basically, we stay in a state of stress way too long and it stay
Right. Right.
there,
Yeah. The cortisol levels
cortisol,
and yeah.
cortisol,
Yeah.
cortisol, come
Cortisol.
on, give me
Yeah.
that.
Boop, 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 boop. That's what it sounds like when our tones go off, and then you get in, you come back, and it's a physiological thing for cortisol levels to come back down, and then
But
boop, 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 boop,
not,
and
but
it just comes back up.
yes, but not on someone that had trauma.
Oh, okay.
Research says that
You're
at
already at
night,
a state. Yeah,
the cortisol doesn't reduce as much. So
that makes
when
sense.
another event happened the following day, it raised higher than the previous day.
Gotcha. And that makes
And
sense because when you're traumatized, or anybody that's dealt with trauma, you have a sense of um, a little bit of fight and flight, but more so hypervigilance and
correct,
worry and anxiety. Even if you're not diagnosed as anxious or having anxiety, there is a heightened level of keeping what had happened to you at the front level, and that's a way of protecting yourself, the fight, and
exactly. Yeah.
sure.
So, but because of that, the cortisol is always through the roof. Other studies demonstrate that when the cortisol is high, the executive lobe, the executive function in the frontal lobe, they are bypassed.
Okay, and that's the decision making section, right? Where like
Decision
ability to
making,
decide if you want to keep something or throw it away or organize it. Yeah,
focus,
yeah, focus.
planning, organization, working memory. When you
Yeah,
get in a room and what was I coming to
yeah,
grab
yeah,
here?
yeah, yeah. That
That
makes a
kind
lot
of
of sense.
question.
Yeah,
So this is really like what's the problem is
yeah.
because
There's a
without those
connection for sure.
function, how can you keep a home tidy? That's a true question that I'm asking. Without those function, we the problem with mental health is we don't see the problem. Like if it would be somebody like in forecast and cannot do the dirt cluttering because they have broken leg and arm, people see it, people acknowledge. But if people cannot do their decluttering because their executive function, six of
Yeah,
them are not working,
yeah,
they
yeah, and
cannot
that
do
makes
as
sense.
much as
Someone
the
who
other person.
Yeah, someone who, like myself, I've had multiple versions of orthopedic procedures and time off. And we've got, people mowing the lawn because they're like, oh, they see me walking the dogs and I've got a cast on my arm. And they're like, oh, do you need help around the house? When you're walking around with a mental injury, or a function of your brain that's not functioning, unless you like broadcast it to people, hey, everybody, I've got a mental injury, not a physical injury. I need help here. And most people aren't going to say that, so
No,
it goes undiagnosed or unnoticed, and then the help, that portion that would accept the help with a physical injury is not there for the mental injury. That makes so much
correct.
sense. You're blowing my mind right now. I mean, I never even thought of it this way. That's why I wanted to have you on this podcast and have this discussion with you, and for both of them, because I think it's fantastic that you took what was a problem for you, and same thing with me. I mean, I took a problem in my mental health, classes and stuff that I was building for mental health resilience training, and I took and that was going god awfully wrong. No one was interested, and I started my podcast. And then when I started that podcast, I realized, wait a second, I'm really good at podcasting, and I'm really good at explaining to people how to podcast. So let me start another podcast that's geared more towards business, because I've always been an entrepreneur. And for us to have this conversation and know that it's going to benefit not only the business path, because there could be someone out there listening, maybe they're not a first responder, maybe they're not a hoarder, but this is like such a unique area of concept, that somebody may have an obscure concept that they've been sitting on for years and they have an expertise in it, but they don't think it's a business, and they want to start a business, and it's just lying there. And like, wait a second, if someone can turn their hoarding into a business, let's do it.
Let me tell you something. The number of entrepreneurs that I see that had trauma in their past, and because of that, they're stuck in their business.
That
They
makes
put
sense.
it on the reason of procrastination and laziness. It's not. Often it's because the trauma is there, their desks are cluttered, and their executive function are just saying, no, not right now. But it's possible to change that and then be successful in business. So even in business, it's totally apply.
Absolutely. And that's my business. What I've done with my business, including when I went, even go back almost 9 years now for voiceover, when I started my voiceover business, it was always people like, why did you want to become a voiceover actor? I mean, I know you like to talk, Kyle, but come on, like you want to trap yourself in a padded room and talk to a microphone in the walls. And I'm like, sure, and I've got the ability to enunciate and have different character voices. That's another reason why I wanted to do voiceover. But it was one of those things where it was something that I could do that eventually I knew it would help someone. And sure enough, within the first year, I was doing voiceover for Atlanta, or not Atlanta, but Georgia Suicide Prevention Hotline. I was the voiceover person for one of their campaigns. And I'm like, boom, there it is. And so once that happened, more confidence came in, the understanding why, this is the reason why I did it, other than just the fact that I've got a decent voice, and so it's neat to hear and talk to somebody who's created something like you have that can help not only the entrepreneur, yourself, and eventually, and some of those first responders, and a lot of first responders are entrepreneurs because we have time to do another job. Hopefully, I'm not a big fan of telling first responders that they should get a second job because they have the time in the same industry that they're first responder in. Right? It's just too much trauma.
Correct.
It's too much. It's
Yeah.
too much. Input,
Yeah.
Too much
It's
input.
too much.
Yeah. Like find something else that's completely separate.
Yeah. So that brings us to 2015, 2016, approximately there, where I really start working with clients that had trauma. And then I specialized to work with people that have trauma. We published our first book in 2018 with the Do Well method explaining it. And then we put the business on a hold for a year and a half, just before COVID. It was not COVID yet. For some family reason, another member of my household got a trauma, severe PTSD, and
Had to help
like
with them.
something happened in his life that make him really, really affected.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, if I'm to help everybody out there, I can help someone in my family.
And you've been through it. Like now you have the experience. I mean, same reason why I started the Elevate podcast. I came through my blind side. I wasn't labeled PTSD yet, but I was clearly on the way. And I raised my hand before the 30-day period. And that's the only reason why I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD, is everything happened in a really small period of time. And I recognized the problem because another similar incident happened again within that 30-day period. And I got off a shift and I'm like, oh, nope, I need help, and like, I wasn't suicidal at the time. I don't think, I'm not now either, but it's one of those things where I just didn't feel right. And I'm like, I reached out to my mentor. And we've always been open with our mental health with each other. And I just asked her, I said, I don't feel right. I don't know what's going on with me. I need you to come over and figure out what we need to do next. And she was brilliant.
Yeah.
She was
Oh,
amazing.
that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Good thing
I'm
you've
just
done
lucky
that.
that way. But after I came through that, that's when I was like, oh, I've got the education background. I want to start something that can help first responders. There's people that are, I mean, I was 20 years in before I had this blind side, right? 20 years of seeing things from hospital trauma in level 1 trauma centers and ERs as a respiratory therapist, and then all the stuff you see as a paramedic, let alone the 2 divorces I was able to work through. And I'm meaning not 2 different wives, 1 wife, 2 possible divorces, was able to, that's a traumatic situation, but it all built from the previous traumas that wasn't being dealt with. So it was a lot of times where things were being poured into the cup and I wasn't doing the right things to file those things away. So it built and built and built and built. And then these 2 incidences happened in a short period of time that caused this like weird physical and emotional and mental issue with me and response. And I'm like, nope. And then got the help I needed. And on the backside of that, created what I created. Then that failed. And then that's when I'm like, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm not going to let, our stubbornness. And when I say our stubbornness, first responders stubbornness, I'm not going to let first responder stubbornness, defeat my ability to create something that I know will help us. And yes, it is a business because I've got the expertise to do what I had to do to make that business. And that's when it dawned on me. I'm like, wait a second, I already know how to podcast. I've never been my own podcast host. Start a podcast. Let's get back on track that way. And that's where we sit now. So a little bit more when it comes to when you decided. So you took that year off. That had to be hard because you felt. I'm sure at that point in time you felt like, oh, we've got something. We got lightning in a bottle. We've got a business. I'm no longer getting paid for first responder.
Was a priority.
Yeah, family's a priority. But so tell me a little bit more about the decision that when you started realizing that this new outlook on trauma and what you've been through and what you could basically, provide for your family and put food on the table with this concept and coach people in stage houses and work with trauma people that have had trauma and they're decluttering. Like, what about that time frame where you had your idea, then you had to, you left it for family first, but then what did that stress do to you? Because I'm sure that was stressful because
That was not too bad.
Okay.
Yes, there's some stress because there's no income coming during that period of time. But at that moment precisely, the previous business, not that it was not successful, but it was going in-home decluttering, and you can do only a maximum of certain number of clients per day, and that limit to your level of income and so on. But in 2020, when COVID hit,
everything
I right away say, oh my God, all the world is getting traumatized right now.
Sure.
So all the people that are already traumatized is just a hammer on the nail.
Yep. Stacking it. Yep.
Exactly. And with everybody starting to order online and those toilet paper
shortages,
hoarding. But with all of that, I told my husband, Jam, I say, we need to do something.
Gotcha.
We need now, not in 2 years, not now. So in 2020, we organized the Coping with Trauma Summit that had over 8,000 people that came to the summit between Christmas and New Year. It was an online summit in 2020 between Christmas and New Year.
Okay, so
because it's always a tough period of time for people with trauma.
Sure, 9 months after COVID stopped the world. Okay. So
yeah.
That first Christmas, we were all essentially told to never go anywhere and be alone.
Exactly, that one.
That was a hard one too, because we did Thanksgiving that year via Zoom.
Yes, we did the same.
Yep.
Yeah, so we at the Coping with Trauma Summit, it was a real success. People were telling how everything they were dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
So right away in 2021, we started what came eventually what we have now as our 1-year program.
Okay. And so now you have a program where Are you still seeing people physically in your local
No,
area, or is it all
no,
online? And
it's
then you,
all online. I have clients around all North America. I have
okay,
clients in Great Britain, in
great.
Australia.
And is that like a weekly meeting that you have? And then do like when it comes to decluttering, do they take their iPhone and show you what they've got or what they,
It's a little bit more. The thing is, what I did is, with trauma, the problem is you never know when you get triggered.
sure. Oh, absolutely.
So I created
Trust
a
you. I
safety
know.
net of meeting.
Yeah.
So there's meeting Monday to Saturday, and there's different time in the day. So it's really like a safety net that if something pop up, they can jump on a meeting.
Okay. Okay.
So
Now, is
it
that a
doesn't
group
mean to
style or is
come,
it one-on-one?
it's group style. It doesn't mean to come at every single meeting. Some do, some come to 2 meetings a week. So it's really depending of the individual. But there's some online component of material that we recorded, and there's a workbook, there's the group where coaching happen. And yes, I have some client in private, but most people are in the group program.
So the group program could be a good, and that's exactly what I wanted to do with my first responder mental health resiliency training, is eventually do a point where we've got a group. We've got someone we meet once a week. We share our stories, we talk about our successes, our struggles, and I had all this stuff planned. It's just no one would ever sign up. No one even ever showed up for the webinars, and that's when
Not
I had to
easy
like,
at the beginning. Not
yeah, not
easy.
easy. Not in 5 months
Ru-
worth
Ru-
of no one showing up. That's when I was like,
Russell
man, I'm defeated.
Brunson,
Yep. So it was
do
one of those.
it for 1 year, every single
Exactly,
day.
exactly. But that's when I started, and I know for a fact that I've already helped probably more first responders starting my podcast by having it out there in the world for people to tune in at their leisure and get the information, at their pace instead of this forced pace, which is also a problem with us first responders. We don't feel like we need the help. So it's a nice, non abrupt way for them to tune in to hear the different strategies and the different things that I present. And then, I talk about both podcasts on each podcast. So sometimes the entrepreneurs, as I'm talking on the other podcast, they come over to this podcast and they get
And it's so
entrepreneurial help.
fun.
So it's like two of my, it's my two passions now, of course, and are, my first responder world is still a passion. I'm still doing it. I'm 9 years away from retirement, but I want to do something after retirement that still helps our people. And this podcast and what I'm building with this, and now I've had people that are running events that are asking me to come and speak as first responder. I've got people asking me
Awesome.
to come and speak as business entrepreneur. So it's a good mix of both things, and showing other first responders that there
It's
is
possible.
something out there that you can do if you have just an idea. So let's get back to so the way that you structure everything now is, how do you generate your leads? Is it word of
So
mouth, Facebook
I,
ads?
we had Facebook ads. We had a YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, and we have a podcast.
Okay, great.
So basically, it's a three-way of generating leads.
Okay.
Word of mouth, we would love to, but we're talking about two stigma here.
Mm-hmm. It's a different
So
stigma when you're
people,
taking not just the mental issue, but then now you're exposing a physical problem that in their space, and that's very, very intimate. I get it.
yeah, because most of the people don't let their friends and even sometimes their family get in their house because they feel ashamed of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky. My wife's a nurse, and do we have clutter? 100%. Do we have a room called the mystery bedroom where it's hard to walk through? But that's like the catch-all. But it's like,
Yeah,
but
a
it's one of those
catch-all
things where
room.
we do our best to keep up. We do have 4 dogs, so that helps because we got to keep things, cleaned up for them. But no, we have our own. I mean, and it's one of those things where I've got an attic. I'm not an attic. I've got a crawl space that has so much stuff. Like I would need to go and I could nix probably a third of what's up there. A lot of it's, previous stuff like toys for the kids and pictures and stuff like that. But a lot of stuff like the different, like Christmas decorations. We've got way too many we don't even use half of the Christmas decorations we have. But then you
I
start to
hear
think
you.
about throwing them away. We're like, well, I may do this, so.
Yes. And that's not just the only problem. When people start decluttering, they feel overwhelmed.
Well, then that's the
So
biggest part. Yeah, that's
if
the
they
biggest part.
didn't deal with the trauma
Yeah,
and they start right away with decluttering the physical space, it's a road for failure.
yeah, yeah.
It's in the sense that it makes like a pendulum, You let
Hmm.
go of clutter, it come back. You let go of clutter, it come back. You let go
Sure.
of clutter,
Oh,
it come
yeah.
back.
We just went to Disney last weekend and we got more stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
I've got
that's
more
what
boxes now to
happened.
be how do I pack? And I'm a box hoarder. I love my technology boxes. Everything's packaged so pretty now. I'm like, well, I can't throw this iPhone box away. I'll never use that iPhone box again. But it's packaged so nicely, It's like, and so I've gotten a little bit better with that. And I have, but another reason why I don't throw away boxes, especially with technology, is sometimes, well, what if I sell that technology? I want to be able to sell it with the original box. And I've struggled with that a little bit too, because I understand that it's worth more, or at least looks better to a buyer when it's in the original box. So it's just, what do I do with that? So I was able to have some strategic areas to hold that stuff. That strategic area has now been gotten rid of. So now I have just a bunch of boxes on a desk in that mystery bedroom, and I need to figure out what to do
Yeah.
with it, but I will.
Yeah, so that brings us to where we
To
are
where
right
you are now.
now.
So when you have so is it truly webinar? Like, are you having another webinar soon to be able to inform people of this, or like what can we promote for you? What can you talk about now that anybody listening could go and find what you do, how to get, I'm sure you do a free consult and all that good stuff. So what is it that you do now to help people go to the next stage once they hear what you do, and it's intriguing and it's interesting to them?
Yeah, let's say there's two things that I want to mention. One is a lead magnet, an offer that I want to do to people.
Okay.
It's to get the 7 secrets of decluttering.
Okay, perfect. A little
And I
freebie.
will
Okay, perfect.
provide you, yeah, I
Yeah,
will
the link will
provide
be
you
below.
the
Yeah.
address so you can put it in there. People can complete a short form, and then they can get into the receiving that first page explaining them 7 secrets of decluttering.
Okay,
And just to
perfect.
give you an example of one of the secrets, like, how people have tendency to touch everything when they declutter, a little bit like the thing is when you touch your belongings, there's a link between the sense of touch and the limbic system in the brain.
Oh,
Limbic
ooh,
system, we're talking about
science.
emotion,
Yeah, I
trauma.
love getting into the science, tech, and nerdy stuff.
So the problem is people touch, let's say, that little plush toy,
Sure.
and they're,
Oh,
oh, it's cute, and they pet it and all of that. They don't want to let it go anymore.
right. That makes
And
sense.
when someone like Mary Kondo, to just name her, that go out there and say, you need to touch everything, and do you feel joy? It works for some people. It doesn't work for people with trauma because they
Mm,
don't know at some point, what does that mean, feeling joy? And the minute they touch things, they are hit by the wave of emotion of everything that is accumulated in the limbic system. So it's not that joy that comes, it's that fear, that anger, that sadness, that shame, and then people become overwhelmed. They don't put the name of what they feel. They don't know that it's all these emotion mixed. And they say, I'm overwhelmed, I need to do something else. And they go scroll on their phone or do something else.
sure.
That's
Sure.
why people feel overwhelmed when they try to
Yeah,
declutter.
and that's probably the hardest part for most people, is that overwhelmingness. Yeah, that overwhelmingness
Wear a
to
pair of
get started.
gloves.
Well, just even so you don't get the tactile feeling.
Seriously,
That
you
makes
don't
sense.
get the tactile,
You don't get
people
the
declutter
tactile.
40% more.
Interesting. And you don't have to wash your hands so often.
And people are not as tired at the end of the decluttering session, and they make objective decisions so they don't have
Yeah.
regrets.
I think that's probably the biggest thing, especially for me, because I've been known to be a procrastinator. And I've done a lot of stuff trying to curb my procrastination. And I guess that's probably the toughest thing, is that overwhelm to get started. Like that, like as soon as I'm started, my ADHD kicks in and I'm awesome. I can make decisions, I can set, okay, I don't know about this one yet, and I'll set it into a corner, and then I'll like, nope, I don't care about that, and I'll throw it away. So like when I start getting, as soon as I turn the corner of doing any of my projects, whether that's building, whether that's, decluttering because I've had issues with decluttering. I have, and it makes total sense. That's why I wanted to talk to you. This is kind of helpful for me too, and as a personal realm, let alone who's listening. But yeah, that getting started, I think, is the hardest part.
And let me tell you that, and that sucks, but the reason why is because the trauma is not all let it go.
Sure. Oh yeah, there's still so much dormant trauma in a lot of us first responders and people.
That's why
Yeah.
when we let go of the coping mechanism associated with the trauma, then we're able to pass. So we develop a 4-step process that we will talk in the other podcast, but that really allow people to be able to declutter and maintain it after.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
awesome.
I was just a little bracket on
yeah, no, that's great.
the gloves and the sense of touch. That is one of the secrets.
As soon as you held up the gloves, I'm like tactile. I'm like, that's why you touch something, you feel that softness, you remember the memory of that softness, that hardness, that toy you picked up that you had so much fun with. You remember having that toy in your hands. Like our memories are way better than we think on all of our senses. Of course, smell is the best. Maybe you should tell people to clog their nose as they clean up stuff that may have smell.
I have something for the sense of smell.
Because smell is the strongest. Yeah, smell is the strongest. Touch is up there. I think audio, listening, hearing something is second highest in memory recall, but tactile is right there with it. So, all right, great. Well, let's bring things to an end. Do you have anything else? Oh, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have something else?
People, I'm not sure when that will be broadcasted, but when you get the 7 secrets, when you receive that, don't hesitate to email us back.
Okay.
Because we frequently have some masterclass or challenge for
and once
really small
they sign up for that, are they in like your chain of communication? Okay.
Yes. So they can get to know, like we are holding one on the 6th to the 8th of May.
Okay, next week. Yeah.
We're having a masterclass. And that would be really, really fun, where I talk more about different strategy to be able to tackle that clutter.
Okay. Well, fantastic. And we'll put that link to that masterclass sign up.
If people have clutter, I highly encourage them to come to the masterclass.
Awesome. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for coming on the Ignition Path podcast today. I have so many more questions, of course, but I think I'm going to save those because it's more first responder oriented, and we'll dive deeper into that whole world of first responders and how many people right now that you work with that are first responders and those first responders that are listening that may don't even know that they need this help. But for now, the Ignition Path, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a very great one. Those who are listening and hearing Valerie's story, just know that no matter what business idea you have, and you're already doing something else out there, just keep swimming, just like they say in Nemo. Dory just keep swimming, keep on plugging away. If you fail, just like I mentioned that I failed on one portion of my business, I failed forward. I failed and went into the podcasting, which then accelerated everything else. Then now it's come full circle, and I'm helping first responders in other ways. So just know that that Ignition Path podcast is put out there for you to have understanding and courage to get through the problems that you face, to spark those ideas that you may be pushing down, to understand that all of my other episodes have very unique, different business paths, and I highly encourage you to tune into those. But Valerie, thanks so much for coming on today, and of course, all of her information that we talked about will be in the show notes. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you've listened to any part of this episode today and it resonates with you or someone else that you may know, hit that share button, send it off through your phone or through your computer, and let them hear it too. So thanks so much, Valerie, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right, take care. Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.